All right. Akshaya should be here in just a moment, y'all. Heck yeah. Akshaya, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going?
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to
Y'all,
see you too.
Akshaya Dinesh, the CEO of Spellbound.io. We're talking about marketing the fast lane, boosting conversions with interactive emails.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. Heck yeah.
an early
Akshaya,
morning
I'm
here. I
super.
have the sun shining. I'm excited.
Oh, yeah. Got it going this morning.
Yeah.
Feeling the earthly vibes. I'm all about it. Awesome, y'all. Well, I'll go to let Akshaya begin here in just a moment. Make sure please throw your questions in the question tab, and we will get going here. Akshaya, I'll go and let you take it away, and I'll see you in a few little moments. All right.
All right. Thanks so
All
much.
right. No problem.
Sweet. All right. Well, let's get it going here. We're gonna get started. So I'm gonna do a quick share screen, but this really should be like the most interactive session possible. So if you have any questions or any thoughts, feel free to start putting them in the chat and putting them in the questions tab, and then we'll come back to it at the end and go over and we'll do an awesome discussion on interactive email. Okay, so I'm gonna start sharing my screen. You're gonna see how embarrassing all my tabs are, and I am gonna hit share. There we go. Sweet. All right. So for today's session, we're going to be talking about marketing in the fast lane. How can we get better conversions, better engagement, and totally shift kind of our perspective and our mindset from the world of static email to the world of interactive email. So a quick kind of background intro about me and why the heck do I care? I'm Akshaya and I'm the founder here at Spellbound. And my background comes from sort of pretty unique. I came from mostly engineering and product background. And when I was working on my last company, I just was blown away by the impact of email and realized how important it was to create awesome, interactive, engaging emails for our audience. And, people did not like my emails when I started, getting started in email. A lot of those emails were pretty crappy. And we had this huge gap between our open rate and our click-through rate. And I was constantly trying to figure out, like, why aren't people clicking on my links? And why is nobody engaging with my content? And as I started to dive deeper, I realized it's because a lot of the emails that I was making were actually pretty kind of, they were pretty bad. And it was because these links were really just trying to trick people into clicking people out of their email and leaving their inbox when honestly, all they wanted to do was stay in their inbox, right? If they're already opening their email to check their email, chances are they probably want to keep going and get to that inbox zero, get to zero unread emails. They don't want to constantly have to leave and go and open a new tab. And especially, with this age of like passwords and two-factor auth and all these other things, oftentimes when they do click on that link from the email, it kind of looks like this, where they have to open a new tab, go to that new website, and then hoop through 5 different pages and tabs. And on mobile, it's even worse because they actually need to choose a browser app to leave their Gmail and go out to that new website. So at the end of the day, very few people were actually clicking on those links, and instead they were just unsubscribing and they were trying to leave my list. So I knew that there had to be a better way. And that's sort of why I became obsessed with interactive email, because people are overwhelmed, and anything that you can do to stand out in that inbox and differentiate yourself from all those other marketing emails that people are getting is going to be so important in today's sort of marketing world. And that's kind of why I think interactive email is this win-win solution, right? It's a win for the consumer because when consumers are opening your email, they don't have to go to the website anymore. They can just do whatever they want immediately in their email. So let's say you're trying to get them to fill out a survey or answer a question or take action with your brand. They can now do that with just 2 simple steps right within the email, never have to leave and go back to another website again. And again, on the brand side of things, it's an even bigger win because the easier it is for your consumers to take action with your brand, the more likely they are to do it, which means we're getting better engagement out of those emails, better conversion rates, and overall a much better email user experience, making your brand look better. So it's awesome for everyone around the table. And you've probably actually seen an interactive email in the wild before, especially in the past few years. They've started to gain in popularity. So here's an example of an interactive email that Google actually created for Google Docs. And if you use G Suite at all at your company, you probably have seen a bunch of these. They use the interactive emails across Google Docs, Google Slides, and there's a few other examples. And if you're curious how this works, This specific email was built using AMP for email, which was the framework that Google had started out with for interactive email. And now it's been adopted across more email clients, and you can use it in so many other ways than just what G Suite has done here right now. And I'm going to walk through a couple other examples. So this is a really cool example, and I think especially for some of you folks that are working in e-commerce or in sort of like the online shopping world, you can actually now use functionality to shop inside of email. So here's a quick example of an email that we at Spellbound have built with some of our brands, where you can actually add different products to your cart, look through images, add things like upsells and kind of like look through all those products. It's basically like a whole online storefront, all within the body of an email itself. Going to show another quick example. Here we have another Google example, and kind of in the same line of shopping. Google has now started to use AMP for email and interactive email across just non-shopping as well. So this is actually a version of an interactive email where they have two different copies. I think they had an interactive HTML as well as an AMP for email. So it just goes to show that even if you're not using AMP for email, even if you have a majority, Apple Mail or non sort of Gmail or AOL or Yahoo audience, there are still awesome ways to take advantage of interactive email. And I thought this one was really cool because they actually had multiple interactive segments of the email. They had that segment at the top with sort of the little carousel and the little colors changing. And then they also had that super cool section where, you could erase the folks and kind of like do a photo editing, almost like a little Photoshop right inside of your inbox. Another quick example, and this one I kind of briefly touched on already, is surveys and collecting feedback. It's so frustrating when you get that little 5-star thing in your email and it looks like it should work and you feel like it should submit, but then all it does is go back out to a link and then all your answers are empty and you got to start from scratch. And so I think it's really, really easy to get way better customer feedback and ask your customer how they're really feeling and build that two-way relationship between the brand. I think so often consumers feel like when they're receiving marketing emails, they're really just kind of, they're letting you scream into the void. Brands are just spamming all the emails that they can, but they're never really responding. They're not actually engaging back with you. And so using interactive emails can be sometimes a very, very simple way to build that two-way relationship and feel like both parties are really communicating with each other. Awesome. And let's get one last example in here. Here we have an example of interactive scheduling. And so this can be really applicable, especially for the B2B types of companies, where if you're sending lots of companies and you actually want people to start booking time with you to get out of their calendar and into their, into face-to-face to chat with you, here's an easy way of doing that and just making it one step faster, one step easier for them to actually book a meeting. And I think all these examples that I showed were desktop examples, but really where I think the potential lies for leveraging interactive email as really the future is in mobile. And the reason for that is because when they're on their phone, it's even easier to use an interactive email than to switch between multiple apps. Even on desktop, it might seem like, okay, why don't I just click on that link? It's just going to open a new tab, no big deal. But I think mobile is really where we're going to see people who want to just totally stop leaving their inbox. Well, so you might be thinking after seeing all these awesome examples, like, yeah, this looks cool, but why should I care? Like, so much work to implement an interactive email. Why does this matter to my brand? And would love to know kind of the demographics of the audience here. Put in the chat if you're, looking at interactive email from the marketing side or from the development side. Would love to know. But let's say you are sort of thinking about the strategy and implementation of like, why should we do these interactive emails? How do I get buy-in for them? How do I get the resources to build them? Well, because they actually do make a really big impact on your metrics, on your conversion rates. And so, oftentimes when we're doing normal email marketing, we're measuring things by our open rate and our click-through rate. Sort of, we have these standard metrics that we can track, but now we have this awesome new metric to track, which is how are people actually engaging inside of the email? And so we call that at Spellbound, we call that our in-email engagement rate. And this engagement rate is telling people, are they actually interacting with your content when they open the email? Are they clicking buttons? Are they starting to submit that form? Do they actually care about what they're reading about? And then, of course, you have your conversion rate. And that's the number of people who are fully finished with that form. They are fully completing the action. And that shows that they really do care about the brand. And the crazy part is that this makes a massive difference. So the example you're seeing here is actually a campaign we did with Mailgun for last year's email camp to get people, or this was actually for a webinar. And the goal was, let's get more people registered for this webinar. And the crazy part is we had 80% more people sign up for that webinar when it was happening inside of the email, which makes sense. It's not that people don't care about the webinar. It's just that everyone's busy. It's a tough world out there. And so we want to get that action done as quickly as possible. And now you might be thinking, okay, I'm sold. This is awesome. Interactive emails are so cool. However, I have no clue how to do them. And it's way too hard. And I don't have an engineer on my team. Totally get it. I hear you. However, I think things have actually gotten a lot easier. First of all, when we talk about interactive email, I use the term interactive email because there are so many different types and forms of interactive emails. And specifically, the two major types that we usually talk about are HTML interactive emails and AMP for email. And I'm not going to go into sort of like the deep technical side of this because I wanted to keep this more sort of like strategy oriented. But if you do have more questions on the two frameworks, go ahead and put those in the questions tab or in the chat, and I'll come back to them in just a couple of minutes. But these are kind of the two major, sort of formats that I would consider for interactive emails. And I think what really people struggle with is sometimes, oh, my ESP doesn't support it. I would have to figure out how to learn how to code, or we don't have an email developer on our team that can use AMP for email and things like that. Well, the awesome part is many ESPs actually do support it. And so, from this list, there's already quite a few. There might be even more that I'm missing out on that you haven't seen here. And so, on the transactional API side, we have companies like Mailgun and SendGrid that all support AMP for email as a file type. And then on the sort of the ESP front, we have customer.io, we have Braze, we have Iterable. And so, on the e-commerce front, pretty much Klaviyo covers a lot of those brands already. So there actually is a lot of really awesome ESP support for AMP for email. And on top of that, if you're writing just a normal HTML interactive email, you don't even need that ESP support. It's just a normal HTML email, nothing different than what you're normally sending. And now that very last piece that you might be wondering is like, well, I also don't really have enough, engineering resources or developer resources to build these from scratch. I'm just using my drag and drop builder in my ESP. Well, that's great too, because there actually are drag and drop tools that exist. Spellbound is one of them. We help brands build these amazing interactive emails without any coding. And there are plenty others out there as well. And so if you just did a quick Google search or went on the AMP for email website, you'll see that there's plenty of other drag and drop tools to be able to make these awesome interactive emails and not even have to touch a single line of code. And I wanted to also talk through just kind of like a couple of examples of like, how can this fit into a larger marketing strategy? Because oftentimes I talk to brands and they're super duper excited about interactive email, but they're kind of trying to look at it as almost like a win that can just like boost all conversions, solve all their problems with marketing. Now, I'm going to be honest, it's not going to solve all your problems. You still have to send great emails. You still have to have great deliverability and make sure that people actually want to see the content that you're sending them. Now, on top of that, it can fit into a really great strategy. It's not going to be the thing that saves the day and makes all your problems go away. So a couple of examples of how that can fit into a larger strategy. So one example is collecting data for your CRM. And I think when marketers talk about personalization, what they often don't talk about is how do you get the data to actually personalize your emails? That data is so key and so important, especially if you have a list where your sign up form is just asking for maybe an email address and maybe a name, and you don't really have that much context on who you're sending to. An interactive form can be a super easy way to basically collect and augment and additionally just add some more context on what actually the people in your list are looking for. So maybe ask them for their preference on what types of product, like you saw an example from a ramen company. Maybe I want to ask like, hey, what's your favorite flavor of ramen? And now that I know their favorite flavor, in my future emails, I can actually do things like segment that campaign or, change the images in the email so that based on the person's favorite flavor, I can change the image that they see in my next email. And that's a really easy thing to do with automations in most common ESPs. Another quick example is surveys and feedback. I talked about that. Webinars, conferences, registrations, pretty much anything where like the action that they need to take is actually super small, but you're making it, making them leave their email. Bring that back into the email and just see the numbers go up for how many people care, how many people are excited. Personally, I think shoppable emails is going to be the future of e-commerce, and I'm super duper excited about the future where I can start to actually, look at different products and start shopping and buying things without even having to go back out to a website. I think email is going to be sort of the new storefront of the future, and I'm super excited for that. Image carousels is a super duper easy one. Oftentimes I see these fully image only emails where there's like 10 images stacked, back to back to back. And oftentimes when you have no text and just images, that's not great for accessibility. It's not great for deliverability. Instead, why don't you put in those images into a carousel and actually have people swipe through and see the images on their own time? And that actually makes them feel like they're more engaged. They're actually spending more time investing in the email itself rather than just doom scrolling away. And lastly, taking product related actions. I saw this really awesome interactive email from Asana a couple of weeks ago where they can actually, you can like a task and like a post in Asana in the email and do similar things like that. There's tons of other awesome examples for that. Ramp has an AMP email where you can actually add a memo to a transaction inside of your email. So these quick little product actions where you can actually interact and bring people from your product back inside the product without even having to take them out of their email is also a really awesome way of using the technology. Well, I really want to open this back up to you. I want to hear, what emails do you wish could be interactive? Maybe emails that your brand is sending, or emails that you're seeing in your inbox from other brands where you're like, oh, I really wish this could be interactive, but it's not. I want to hear those thoughts. I want to brainstorm together. Let's do kind of a group brainstorm. I'm going to switch it over to the questions tab and see what questions people have.
Love it, love it, love it. Y'all, I want to talk about this integration that we had done with Spellbound.
Oh, all right, here we go. I'm seeing some questions in the chat.
There we go.
All right, amazing. Okay, I'm gonna go scroll back up here. Here we go. Oh my God, this chat is so long. I wish I could see it while I was presenting, but I can't. So now I'm catching up here. All right, here we go. Amazing. So we've got a question saying, what platform are you using for this newsletter? I guess which email? There were a ton of emails in there. Is it fairly simple to get your brand set up with AMP for email register for Google if they're sending ESP can utilize it? That was an incredible question. Thank you for asking that question. There are a few prerequisites. For example, you will need to have SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. Those are going to be awesome things that you'll want set up, and it'll help with your deliverability in general. So it's not just a prerequisite for AMP for email. I would recommend enabling those anyway on your domain. But if you're sending ESP can send emails, then the verification process is actually super simple. It usually only takes 2 or 3 days. What you'll want to do is you'll want to send a test email to a certain domain that gets Google to verify that you are able to send that AMP email and it looks fine. It has no errors or no issues. And then from there, you'll be able to fill out a Google form that just has like your email address that you're going to be sending those emails from. And boom, 2 to 3 days later, you'll hear back whether you were approved or rejected. So it's not too difficult. Awesome. Let's see what else we have here. Awesome to see that there are some folks both on the development side as well as the marketing side in here. This is awesome. Cool. All right.
Y'all, I want to talk about the integration that we got to do with Akshaya and Spellbound real quick. It was so cool to see this email, this interactive email, especially as a multimedia marketer myself, when you're trying to get data, input it into a form, and then bring it back around to you, and you're trying to make the journey as easy as possible. It was so smooth. It was so beautiful looking. I can't commend the Spellbound team enough for it because it was just so stinking cool. But I think this kind of leads into a great question from Megan. She asked, how do I get form data from the email into the end destination, from the CRM to the registration software, et cetera?
Yeah, that is a great question. So it depends on how you make this email. If you're using, your own kind of like development, process to make your AMP email or make your interactive email, then you will have to make your own backend as well. So it is going to be a lot more complicated if you are building these emails yourselves. You'll have to build the front end inside the email. You'll also need to build your own server code, your backend code that actually takes all the form data, processes it, and cleans it up, and then sends it back to whatever form provider you're trying to send it to. Now, if you're using a drag and drop provider like Spellbound, that makes this way, way easier. So the way we do this inside Spellbound's product is we'll basically have integrations with all the popular CRMs and form softwares, webinar softwares, which will basically make it so that that form automatically works out of the box in 2 clicks. All you got to do is pick the form and drop it in your email. it'll instantly just send those registrations back to those providers. So kind of depends on your workflow and kind of how you're building it. There's also ways to kind of like hack things together sometimes where, let's say the drag and drop tool that you're using doesn't support all the necessary, platforms that you want to send data to. You can use things like Zapier to try to like, send data back and forth from one place to another and hopefully hack it so that the data is still in the right places where you care about them.
Nice. And this kind of leads into the same area, but Andrea wanted to know, is it fairly simple to get your brand set up with AMP for email and register with Google? If they're sending ESP can utilize it. I remember doing this with you.
Yes, we did do it together.
Yeah.
I think I just answered your question, Andrea, from the other chat, but yes, it is fairly simple. So this is the one where I talked about, it'll take 2 or 3 days to get registered. You'll basically want to send out a test email to an email address, fill out a Google form. A few days later, you'll hear back.
Yep. Awesome. And then let's see what else we got here, y'all. Is it possible to have email integration for event signups? Yeah, we were able to do that for certain platforms.
Yeah, that was the example that I showed for sure.
Yep, for sure. Let's see here. What else we got? I'm not sure. Actually, I had a little brief connection issue, so I apologize if this one's already been asked, and I hope it hasn't. But what is the easiest interactivity component to work on if you're just getting started? What are the most effective, less complex examples email teams should start with?
Where is that?
This was from a separate channel that we had gotten this. I can read it off to you again.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I lost you there.
No worries.
Please.
So they wanted to know what is the easiest interactivity component to work on if you're just getting started? What are the most effective, less complex examples email teams should start with?
That's a great question. So again, it depends on whether you're coding your interactive emails yourselves or you're using a drag and drop builder for them. If you're coding them yourselves, I'd recommend starting with like the most basic component. In my opinion, I think that's an image carousel. So just getting a few images that you want people to swipe through and then adding those buttons. There's tons of awesome, resources out there that you can use to learn about them. I think Megan mentioned in the chat, Mark Robbins is awesome. He has a ton of content out there. Yep, Jay just mentioned click to reveal is also another awesome thing. And I think his session has an interactive email live coding session. So if you are a developer, definitely check that out. I think my session is way more focused on sort of the strategy and implementation for marketing teams and how to think about fitting this in their workflows.
Nice. I love this one because I think I kind of remember this, that you kind of had something on this, Akshaya, but Taylor wanted to know, how can we check if our ESP works with AMP interactive email? I think you had a resource from what I remember.
Yeah, I did. So we had a little, I had a little slide on there. So when you see the recording, there'll be a slide with a few examples. Honestly, the easiest way is to either Google your ESP and just Google AMP for email support. Second thing is if you have like a support chatbot with your ESP, or you have like a customer support representative that you chat with usually, or, customer success person on their team, just go ahead and ask them. Usually they'll know, or if they've never heard of it before, then that's your answer.
There you go. Okay. Let's see here. What else we got? This one might be, I think this one's, yeah. Akshaya, Aaron wanted to know, does Google take in email engagement into account versus click rates?
That is actually a great question. I unfortunately don't know. I can't say that I have the answer to that question. I wish I knew.
No worries. We'll come back to that one later on down the line. Okay. Cool. Ladies and gentlemen.
Cool, I'm going to try to get through and answer some of these because there's so many questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let's see. So I think I saw a question about where the shopping example came from. So this was from Miriam. What tools are you using for shopping online instead of emails? So the shopping email that you saw was made from Spellbound. So Spellbound works with a lot of e-commerce brands at spellbound.io. And we basically have a piece of functionality where you can actually take an online storefront, turn it into an email one, and start putting products inside of an email for things like abandoned cart flows, abandoned browse, welcome flows, campaigns, all that kind of stuff.
Nice. Got that one tagged up. What else you see in here, Akshaya?
Let's see. Okay. Any issues with email clipping when you add products to your code? Sounds like it would add a lot of code. That is a really, really good point. So for AMP for email, there are very different kind of, limitations and expectations for the email file size. And so usually we don't end up hitting that limit. But if we do, then yes. So there is still a limit for AMP for email. It's just, slightly different. And so we will basically want to, build with that in mind. And so like if we have those products that I had in the email, like we tend to say like use a maximum of maybe 5 products at max. If you start using like 20 products in that email, you are going to start reaching file size issues. But it's just something to notice. Usually when we're doing testing and development, we'll make sure to test it to make sure and get that, feedback from the email clients to make sure that it's not too big when we build them out.
Perfect. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Akshaya, did you see this one about, looks like someone was elaborating on how to start the setup. Is there a landing page where I can initiate that setup?
Just answered that one. I guess I'm not sure what you're talking about in terms of setup. So if you have a follow-up question there, let me know. But in terms of getting set up to start coding for AMP for email, there's tons of docs at just amp.dev on their website there. But if you're talking about how to get set up with drag and drop, our website is just spellbound.io. Feel free to check it out there. Book a demo with me and I can tell you more.
I love this one that just came in. How likely would these kinds of emails affect the recipient's experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm not sure if you mean in terms of like how many people in the audience are going to see the interactive version of the email or not. So it really does depend on what your audience is. In fact, I think the folks over at Parcel made this really cool tool that just tells you like what percentage of your audience is going to receive what types of emails. If somebody has a link to that, put that in the chat, please. So that'll basically help tell you in terms of like the number of people in your audience that are actually going to see the interactive version of the email, because it really does depend on your list, on your audience, depending on like how many people are using what email client in your list.
And even to talk about a recipient experience, I'll even go back to the one I was talking about with Akshaya when we did this webinar. It made my life as a multimedia marketer so much easier to know that, okay, when my recipient receives this email, all they have to do is one just simple form fill out within the email. It's beautiful. It looks great. And I can even imagine, yes, in the future, it could become the new storefront over the internet, which would be lovely. I don't have to go anywhere, which I probably need to go some places, but like just that experience overall was it was wonderful. I enjoyed it very much. So just gotta put that in there. Awesome. Well, Akshaya, I think that's all the time we got today for Q&A. I appreciate you stopping by. I love when you come by and hang out with us. It's always a blast. Ladies and gentlemen, Akshaya Dinesh, CEO of Spellbound.io. Is there anything you want to leave us with before you head out?
No, I just want to say, like, anytime, I'm always down to chat about interactive emails. Reach out to me. My email is akshaya@spellbound.io. I want to hear from you guys and hear more about all the different cool ways you want to leverage it. And happy to help anytime.
Awesome. Love it. She's always there, y'all. Let her know. Cool, Akshaya. Well, thanks for stopping by. I hope to see you soon, and take care out there, all right?
All right. See you guys later.
All right. See you, Akshaya.